What if there was a way to experience every age you've ever been, or ever will be, simply by pressing a button, to feel the boundless energy of childhood again, or to glimpse the wisdom of your elderly self decades before you reach that age? In October 2022, Dr. Michael Harrison received an emergency call from a luxury hotel in Manhattan that would lead him to one of the most extraordinary and terrifying discoveries in the history of human consciousness, an elevator that could transport people not between floors, but between the ages of their own lives. Dr. Harrison, the voice on the phone belonged to Detective Sarah Martinez from the NYPD, and she sounded deeply shaken. "We have a situation at the Meridian Hotel that I can't even begin to explain. We need someone with your expertise in temporal psychology immediately. We have people aging and de-aging in front of our eyes, and we have no idea how to stop it." Dr. Harrison, a researcher specializing in age-related cognitive changes and temporal perception disorders, had spent his career studying how the human mind experienced the passage of time, but nothing in his 15 years of research had prepared him for what he would find on the 42nd floor of one of Manhattan's most prestigious hotels. The Meridian Hotel had been a landmark of luxury for over a century, known for its impeccable service and its clientele of celebrities, politicians, and business leaders. But on that October morning, the elegant establishment had become the site of an impossible phenomenon that would challenge everything science believed about aging, time, and human consciousness. The first incident had occurred at 6:47 a.m., when Margaret Chen, a 45-year-old investment banker staying in room 4201, had entered the elevator to go down to the lobby for her morning jog. Security cameras showed her pressing the button for the ground floor, but when the elevator doors opened 30 seconds later, a confused 8-year-old girl in an oversized business suit stumbled out, crying for her mommy. Hotel security initially assumed it was some kind of elaborate prank or case of mistaken identity, but the child had Margaret's voice, her memories, her knowledge of complex financial markets, and most convincingly, her distinctive scar from a childhood bicycle accident. DNA tests would later confirm that the 8-year-old girl was indeed Margaret Chen, somehow transformed into her childhood self while retaining her adult mind and memories. The second incident occurred 20 minutes later when James Rodriguez, a 72-year-old retired professor, entered the same elevator. He pressed the button for the 15th floor where he was staying, but when the doors opened, a vigorous 25-year-old man emerged, looking down at his suddenly young hands with a mixture of terror and wonder. "I remember being this age," James said in a voice that was decades younger, but carried the same speech patterns and personality. "I remember this body, these muscles, this energy, but I also remember everything that happened after my marriage, my children, my career, growing old. How is this possible?" Dr. Harrison arrived at the Meridian Hotel to find the building in complete lockdown. The elevator in question had been sealed off by police and federal agents, while the two transformed individuals were under medical observation in a hastily established command center in the hotel's ballroom. What he witnessed challenged every principle of biology, physics, and human development that he had ever studied. Margaret Chen, now in the body of her 8-year-old self, was attempting to conduct business calls while struggling with the physical limitations of her childhood form. Her adult mind was intact. She could recall complex financial formulas and market analyses, but she was trapped in a body that couldn't reach light switches, had difficulty holding adult-sized objects, and was experiencing the emotional volatility that came with a child's neurochemistry. "The strangest part isn't being young again," Margaret explained to Dr. Harrison, her child's voice incongruously discussing stock portfolios and merger agreements. "It's remembering what it felt like to be this age, while simultaneously knowing everything I learned as an adult. I have the wisdom of 45 years, but the impulse control of an 8-year-old. I understand complicated financial instruments, but I also want to color with crayons and watch cartoons." James Rodriguez presented the opposite dilemma. His 72-year-old mind was now housed in a 25-year-old body that felt foreign despite being his own. He possessed 7 decades of accumulated knowledge and experience, but his young body was flooded with energy and hormones that his elderly consciousness wasn't prepared to handle. "I feel like I could run a marathon," James told Dr. Harrison, "but I also feel overwhelmed by sensations I haven't experienced in decades. Colors seem brighter, sounds are sharper, and I have energy I don't know how to channel. My body wants to move and explore and experience everything, but my mind wants the peace and contemplation of old age." Dr. Harrison's preliminary examination of the elevator revealed no obvious technological modifications or unusual equipment. It appeared to be a standard commercial elevator manufactured in 2019, with typical floor buttons, safety features, and mechanical systems. But when he studied the floor buttons more carefully, he noticed something peculiar that had escaped initial observation. The numbers on the buttons weren't arranged in the typical sequential order. Instead of floors 1, 2, 3 and so on, the buttons were labeled with what appeared to be random numbers: 8, 17, 25, 33, 41, 52, 67, 78, 89. It took Dr. Harrison several minutes to realize that these numbers weren't floor designations at all, they were ages. When Margaret Chen had pressed what she thought was the button for the ground floor, she had actually pressed the button labeled 8, and had been transformed into her 8-year-old self. James Rodriguez had pressed 25 inches thinking he was selecting the 15th floor, and had been returned to his 25-year-old body. The elevator wasn't moving between floors, it was moving between ages. This realization prompted Dr. Harrison to conduct a more thorough examination of the elevator's interior. Hidden behind a panel that looked like standard maintenance access, he discovered technology that defied explanation. Complex crystalline structures were connected to quantum computing devices that hummed with energy patterns unlike anything in current scientific literature. The discovery led to the involvement of Dr. Elena Vasquez, a quantum physicist from Columbia University, and Dr. Sarah Kim, a biogerontologist from the National Institute on Aging. Together they began to study what appeared to be the world's first functional time machine, but one that operated on biological rather than chronological time. What we're seeing here, Dr. Vasquez explained after her initial analysis, appears to be a device that can access and manipulate the temporal information stored in human DNA. Every cell in our body contains not just our genetic code but also the temporal markers that determine our biological age. This elevator somehow accesses that information and can reset a person's biological clock to any point in their personal timeline. The technology seemed to work by creating a localized temporal field within the elevator that could scan a person's complete biological history and then reconstruct their cellular structure to match any selected age. The process was apparently instantaneous and complete, not just changing appearance but actually reversing or advancing the physical aging process at the molecular level. Dr. Kim's biological analysis of the transformed individuals confirmed that the changes weren't cosmetic but represented actual cellular age modification. Margaret Chen's cells showed all the characteristics of an 8-year-old's biology: increased regenerative capacity, different hormone levels, and neural development patterns consistent with childhood. Similarly, James Rodriguez's cells had been restored to the physiological state of a 25-year-old, complete with enhanced muscle tone, improved organ function, and optimal cellular repair mechanisms. But the psychological implications of the transformation were far more complex than the physical changes.
Dr.
Harrison's cognitive assessments revealed that while both individuals retained their adult memories and personalities, they were also experiencing the emotional and psychological states associated with their new biological ages. Margaret Chen found herself struggling with impulse control, attention span, and emotional regulation that were typical of childhood but completely foreign to her adult identity. She would begin serious business discussions but become distracted by simple visual stimuli or overwhelmed by emotions that she couldn't process with adult rationality. "I know I should be able to focus on this quarterly report," Margaret explained during one of Dr. Harrison's interviews, "but there's a bird outside the window and it's so pretty and I can't stop watching it. I understand that this is childish, but I can't help myself. My brain works differently now even though I have all my adult memories." James Rodriguez experienced a different but equally challenging adjustment. His elderly wisdom and perspective were now paired with the physical vitality and emotional intensity of youth. He reported feeling restless, sexually charged, and eager for new experiences in ways that his decades of accumulated caution and moderation couldn't easily control. "I have the judgment to know better, but the energy and impulses to ignore that judgment," James told Dr. Harrison. "I want to take risks, pursue adventures, and experience life with an intensity that I know from experience can lead to poor decisions. My young body is overriding my old mind's better judgment." As word of the elevator's discovery spread through classified government channels, Dr. Harrison found himself at the center of intense interest from multiple agencies. The military saw potential applications for creating young soldiers with the wisdom of experienced veterans. Intelligence agencies were interested in agents who could appear to be any age while maintaining their full adult capabilities. Medical researchers envisioned treatments for age-related diseases that could literally turn back the biological clock. But Dr. Harrison was becoming increasingly concerned about the psychological and social implications of age manipulation. His continued study of Margaret and James revealed that the transformation wasn't just changing their bodies, it was fundamentally altering their identities and relationships in ways that neither had anticipated. Margaret's husband and children struggled to relate to her in her child form, creating family dynamics that were both heartbreaking and bizarre. Her 10-year-old son found it confusing to have a mother who appeared younger than him but still tried to exercise parental authority. Her husband faced the disturbing situation of being married to someone who looked like a child, even though he knew it was his wife in a different form. "Our whole family structure has been destroyed," Margaret's husband told Dr. Harrison during a family counseling session. "How do I relate to my wife when she looks like my daughter? How do my children respect someone who appears younger than they are? We love Margaret, but we don't know how to be a family with her in this form." James Rodriguez faced different but equally challenging social difficulties. His friends and colleagues couldn't reconcile his youthful appearance with his elderly wisdom and memories. Some treated him like a young person, dismissing his decades of experience and knowledge. Others were disturbed by the disconnect between his appearance and his personality, finding it unsettling to interact with someone whose external age didn't match their internal development. The elevator itself became the subject of intensive investigation, as researchers tried to understand its origin and operation. The device had been installed during routine renovation work in 2021 by a contractor named Dr. Alexander Petrov, a former Soviet scientist who had died in a car accident just days after completing the installation. His background revealed connections to classified research programs involving temporal manipulation and consciousness studies. Dr. Petrov's personal notes, recovered from his estate, revealed that he had been working on what he called biographical time travel, the ability to move consciousness forward or backward through a person's individual timeline, rather than through universal time. His research suggested that every human being contained within their DNA and neural structure a complete record of every age they had been or would be, and that this information could be accessed and manifested physically. The implications of this discovery were staggering. If Dr. Petrov's theories were correct, the elevator wasn't just changing people's ages, it was accessing a kind of biological memory that contained every moment of their personal timeline. This meant that people could potentially experience not just different ages but different versions of themselves from alternate life paths. Dr. Harrison decided to test this theory by volunteering to use the elevator himself, despite the protests of his colleagues and the obvious risks involved. At age 42, he chose to experience his 25-year-old self, pressing the corresponding button with a mixture of scientific curiosity and personal terror. The transformation was instantaneous and overwhelming. Dr. Harrison found himself in the body he had possessed 17 years earlier, complete with the energy, strength, and hormonal patterns of his younger self. But along with the physical changes came a flood of memories and emotions from that age, the ambition, uncertainty, and intensity that had characterized his mid-20s. "It's not just about having a younger body," Dr. Harrison recorded in his research notes. "I'm experiencing the mindset and emotional state of my 25-year-old self. I remember what it felt like to be this age. The sense of infinite possibility, the hunger for experience, the belief that I could change the world. But I also retain my current knowledge and perspective, creating a strange duality of youth and experience." The psychological impact was profound. Dr. Harrison found himself questioning life choices he had made over the past 17 years, wondering about paths not taken and opportunities missed. His 25-year-old emotional state made him feel restless with his current life circumstances, while his accumulated wisdom told him that those feelings were normal for that age but not necessarily accurate assessments of his actual situation. More troubling was his discovery that the age transformation affected not just his body and mind but also his perception of time itself. As a 25-year-old, 17 years seemed like an enormous span of time, while as a 42-year-old it had felt relatively brief. This temporal perspective shift made him feel disconnected from his current life, as if his adult achievements and relationships belonged to someone else. Dr. Harrison's experience in the elevator lasted only 6 hours before the effects began to wear off. The transformation wasn't permanent. The body's natural cellular processes gradually reasserted themselves, returning him to his chronological age over the course of several days. But the psychological impact of experiencing his younger self remained long after the physical changes had faded. His research revealed that the elevator's effects were temporary, lasting anywhere from a few hours to several days depending on the individual and the extent of the age change. The body seemed to have a kind of temporal inertia that eventually overcame the artificial age modification, returning people to their natural chronological state. But even temporary age changes had lasting psychological effects. People who experienced their younger selves often became dissatisfied with their current lives, experiencing what Dr. Harrison termed temporal nostalgia. a longing not just for their youth but for the mindset and possibilities they had possessed at that age. Those who experienced older versions of themselves sometimes became depressed or anxious about their future, having directly experienced the physical and mental limitations that awaited them. As news of the elevator's existence began to leak despite government secrecy efforts, public reaction was intense and divided. Some saw it as the ultimate fountain of youth, a way to literally turn back the clock and reclaim lost vitality. Others viewed it as a dangerous violation of natural order that could have unpredictable psychological and social consequences. Religious leaders debated whether age manipulation represented an attempt to play God with human development and mortality. Ethicists worried about the implications for society if some people had access to age modification while others didn't. Psychologists expressed concerns about the identity confusion and relationship problems that age manipulation seemed to create. The elevator also raised profound questions about the nature of personal identity and the relationship between mind and body. If someone could inhabit their 8-year-old body with their adult mind, which version represented their true self? Were they fundamentally the same person at different ages, or did age changes create entirely different individuals who happened to share the same memories?
Eisen differti. Sevet t gif.
Dr. Harrison's research team expanded to include philosophers, theologians, and social scientists as the implications of age manipulation became clear. They were studying not just a technological phenomenon, but a fundamental challenge to human understanding of identity, development, and the meaning of age itself. Margaret Chen and James Rodriguez became long-term study subjects as researchers tracked the lasting effects of their transformations. Both reported that their brief experience of different ages had changed their perspective on their current lives in ways that persisted long after they returned to their chronological ages. Margaret found that her experience as an 8-year-old had reminded her of the wonder and creativity she had lost as an adult. She made significant changes to her career and lifestyle, seeking more balance and opportunities for play and exploration. Being young again made me realize how serious and rigid I had become, she told Dr. Harrison. I don't want to go back to being 8, but I want to keep some of that child's joy and curiosity in my adult life. James Rodriguez had the opposite reaction. His experience in a 25-year-old body had reminded him of the wisdom and perspective that came with age. He became more appreciative of his elderly status and less focused on trying to reclaim his youth. Feeling young again made me realize that I don't actually want to be young, he explained. I've earned my gray hair and my wrinkles. They represent decades of experience and growth that I wouldn't want to give up. The elevator continued to operate under strict government control, with access limited to approved research subjects and carefully monitored conditions. But its existence had already begun to influence society in unexpected ways. Age discrimination in employment became more complex when employers knew that physical age might not reflect actual experience or capability. Relationships faced new challenges as people wondered whether their partners might choose to change their age, fundamentally altering the relationship dynamic. The concept of aging gracefully was complicated when aging itself became optional, at least temporarily. Dr. Harrison's research culminated in a comprehensive study of what he termed temporal identity fluidity, the psychological and social effects of experiencing multiple ages within a single lifetime. His findings revealed that while age manipulation was technologically possible, the human psyche wasn't well equipped to handle rapid transitions between different developmental stages. People who used the elevator frequently reported identity confusion, relationship problems, and difficulty maintaining consistent goals and values across different age states. The continuity of experience and gradual development that characterized natural aging appeared to be essential for psychological stability and social functioning. The elevator that could take you to different ages had revealed something profound about human development and identity. Age wasn't just a biological state but a complex integration of physical, psychological, and social factors that couldn't be artificially manipulated without significant consequences. As Dr. Harrison prepared his final report on the elevator phenomenon, he reflected on what the discovery had taught about the nature of human existence. The ability to experience different ages had shown that each stage of life had unique value and perspective that couldn't be fully appreciated from other stages. Childhood brought wonder and creativity, but also vulnerability and limited understanding. Youth offered energy and possibility, but also impulsiveness and poor judgment. Middle age provided balance and competence, but sometimes at the cost of spontaneity and dreams. Old age brought wisdom and perspective, but also physical limitations and approaching mortality. The elevator had demonstrated that trying to cherry-pick the benefits of different ages while avoiding their challenges was neither possible nor desirable. Each stage of life was part of a continuous development process that gave meaning and coherence to human existence. The natural progression through ages wasn't a limitation to be overcome but a fundamental aspect of what made life meaningful and human identity coherent. Dr. Harrison's final recommendation was that the elevator should remain as a research tool for understanding human development rather than being made available for general use. The psychological and social costs of age manipulation appeared to outweigh the potential benefits, at least until society developed better frameworks for understanding and supporting temporal identity changes. The elevator continued to exist as a classified facility, studied by researchers and occasionally used by volunteers willing to contribute to understanding of human temporal psychology, but its greatest contribution to human knowledge wasn't the ability to change ages. It was the revelation that natural aging, with all its challenges and limitations, was an essential part of what made human life meaningful and human identity coherent. People who experienced the elevator often reported a greater appreciation for their natural age and the unique perspective it provided. They learned that the grass wasn't necessarily greener at other ages, but that each stage of life offered its own gifts and challenges that were best experienced in their natural sequence. The elevator that took you to different ages had ultimately taught humanity that time's passage wasn't a problem to be solved, but a gift to be embraced. Each age represented a unique way of experiencing the world that couldn't be fully appreciated from any other stage of development. The natural progression through life stages wasn't a limitation but the very foundation of human growth, wisdom, and meaning. In the end, the most important discovery wasn't how to change ages but how to appreciate the age you were naturally meant to be at any given moment. The elevator had shown that the search for eternal youth or premature wisdom was less important than learning to fully inhabit and appreciate whatever age life had brought you, understanding that each moment of your natural development was irreplaceable and valuable in its own unique way. The temporal technology remained locked away, a testament to human ingenuity and a reminder that some aspects of the human experience were more beautiful when left unchanged. The elevator had offered the ultimate power over time and age, but in doing so, it had revealed that the most profound satisfaction came not from controlling time but from accepting it, embracing each stage of life as it came, and finding meaning in the natural rhythm of human development that connected every person to the universal experience of growing, learning, and eventually passing wisdom on to the next generation. The elevator that took you to different ages had ultimately taught humanity that time's passage wasn't a problem to be solved but a gift to be embraced. Each age represented a unique way of experiencing the world that couldn't be fully appreciated from any other stage of development. The natural progression through life stages wasn't a limitation but the very foundation of human growth, wisdom, and meaning. In the end, the most important discovery wasn't how to change ages but how to appreciate the age you were naturally meant to be at any given moment. The elevator had shown that the search for eternal youth or premature wisdom was less important than learning to fully inhabit and appreciate whatever age life had brought you, understanding that each moment of your natural development was irreplaceable and valuable in its own unique way. The temporal technology remained locked away, a testament to human ingenuity and a reminder that some aspects of the human experience were more beautiful when left unchanged. The elevator had offered the ultimate power over time and age, but in doing so, it had revealed that the most profound satisfaction came not from controlling time, but from accepting it, embracing each stage of life as it came, and finding meaning in the natural rhythm of human development that connected every person to the universal experience of growing, learning, and eventually passing wisdom on to the next generation. But the story of the age-changing elevator was far from over. As months passed, Dr. Harrison's research team made increasingly disturbing discoveries about the long-term effects of temporal manipulation. The elevator's influence extended beyond those who had used it directly, affecting family members, friends, and colleagues in ways that nobody had anticipated. Margaret Chen's children, despite her physical return to her 45-year-old body, began exhibiting signs of what Dr. Harrison termed temporal displacement anxiety. They had witnessed their mother transform into someone younger than themselves, fundamentally disrupting their understanding of family hierarchy and the natural order of generations. Her 10-year-old son developed recurring nightmares about adults turning into children and abandoning their parental responsibilities. "I keep worrying that mommy will disappear again," he told the child psychologist Dr. Harrison had brought onto the team. "If she can become a little kid, what's to stop her from becoming a baby, or from just going away completely? I don't understand how to trust grown-ups anymore when they might not stay grown-up." The psychological impact on family structures proved to be one of the most significant unintended consequences of the elevator's use. Children who witnessed age transformation lost their fundamental sense of security and adult stability and protection. Spouses struggled with questions about the permanence of their relationships when their partners could literally become different people through age manipulation. James Rodriguez's wife faced a particularly complex emotional situation. During his brief transformation into a 25-year-old, she had been forced to confront the reality that her 72-year-old husband could become a young man with all the physical vitality and potential for new relationships that youth implied. Even after he returned to his natural age, their marriage was strained by questions about whether he would choose to become young again and whether a young version of himself would still want to be married to a woman his chronological age. "I fell in love with James at every stage of our relationship," she confided to Dr. Harrison during couples counseling sessions. "I loved him when we were young together, and I've loved watching him age and become the wise, gentle man he is today. But when he became 25 again, I realized that the young man I saw wasn't the same person I married 50 years ago. Age had changed him in fundamental ways, and losing those changes felt like losing the person I love most." Dr. Harrison's investigation into the elevator's origins yielded more disturbing information about Dr. Alexander Petrov and his research. Classified documents revealed that Petrov had been working on temporal manipulation technology for decades, conducting unauthorized experiments on himself and a small group of volunteers, who had signed agreements that waived all legal protections and medical oversight. The documents described experiments where subjects had been repeatedly cycled through different ages, sometimes multiple times per day, in an attempt to map the complete temporal profile of human consciousness. Several subjects had suffered complete psychological breakdowns, losing their sense of identity entirely as they struggled to maintain coherence across rapidly changing age states. One particularly harrowing case involved a volunteer named Dr. Elena Kozlov, a fellow researcher who had allowed herself to be age-shifted dozens of times over a 6-month period. According to Petrov's notes, Dr. Kozlov had eventually become unable to maintain a stable sense of self, claiming that she was simultaneously every age she had ever been, and could no longer distinguish between memories from different temporal states. "Subject exhibits complete temporal identity fragmentation," Petrov had written. "She speaks as a child while discussing adult experiences, demonstrates elderly wisdom while exhibiting teenage emotional responses, and appears to have lost the ability to maintain chronological coherence in her sense of self. The experimental protocol must be revised to prevent similar psychological dissolution." The fate of Dr. Kozlov remained unknown, but the documents suggested that several other subjects had experienced similar identity fragmentation. Petrov's research had been shut down by his government handlers, but he had apparently continued working on the technology in secret, eventually creating the elevator installation at the Meridian Hotel as his final experiment. Dr. Harrison realized that the elevator represented not just a technological achievement, but the culmination of decades of unethical human experimentation. The device had been perfected through the suffering of unknown numbers of test subjects, who had lost their psychological integrity in service of Petrov's obsession with temporal manipulation. This discovery prompted Dr. Harrison to conduct more extensive psychological evaluations of Margaret Chen, James Rodriguez, and the other individuals who had used the elevator. His assessments revealed subtle but concerning signs of identity instability that hadn't been apparent immediately after their transformations. Margaret reported experiencing what she described as age bleed, moments when she felt the emotional states and physical sensations of her 8-year-old self despite being in her adult body. These episodes were triggered by stress or strong emotions and left her feeling confused about which version of herself was real. "Sometimes I'll be in a business meeting, and suddenly I feel overwhelmed and want to cry the way I used to when I was little," Margaret explained. "It's not just remembering being a child, it's actually feeling like a child again even though I'm in my adult body. I start seeing the world through a child's eyes, and all the adult responsibilities and complexities seem too much to handle." James experienced similar temporal echoes, but is manifested as physical sensations and energy patterns from his 25-year-old self. He would suddenly feel the need to run or exercise intensively, driven by phantom sensations of youthful energy that his 72-year-old body couldn't actually sustain. "My mind remembers what it felt like to have that young, strong body," James told Dr. Harrison. "Sometimes I forget that I'm old now, and I try to move or act like I'm 25 again. I've hurt myself several times because my brain is sending signals that my body can't fulfill. It's like I'm living in two ages at the same time." Dr. Harrison's research team identified this phenomenon as temporal echo syndrome, a condition where individuals who had experienced artificial age changes retained psychological and sensory imprints from their transformed states. The condition appeared to be progressive, with symptoms becoming more frequent and intense over time rather than fading as initially hoped. The discovery of temporal echo syndrome prompted emergency protocols to prevent further use of the elevator, while researchers studied the long-term implications. But the damage was already done for those who had experienced age transformation. They were living with the psychological consequences of having been multiple ages simultaneously, and those consequences appeared to be permanent. Dr. Harrison's expanding research revealed that temporal echo syndrome affected not just perception and emotion, but also memory formation and decision-making processes. Individuals with the condition sometimes made choices based on the reasoning patterns of their transformed age states rather than their chronological age, leading to inappropriate or dangerous behaviors. Margaret had made several impulsive financial decisions that reflected the simplified thinking patterns of her 8-year-old self, nearly causing significant losses for her clients. James had attempted to pursue romantic relationships with women decades younger than himself, driven by the emotional and physical desires of his 25-year-old state, despite his elderly appearance and circumstances. The psychological treatment for temporal echo syndrome proved challenging because traditional therapy approaches weren't designed to address identity fragmentation across different age states. Dr. Harrison worked with specialists in dissociative disorders and multiple personality conditions to develop new therapeutic techniques for helping people integrate experiences from artificial age states. The treatment involved a process called temporal integration therapy, where patients learned to acknowledge and accept the different age states they had experienced while maintaining their chronological identity as their primary sense of self. The process was lengthy and difficult, requiring patients to essentially negotiate between different versions of themselves to achieve psychological coherence. As Dr. Harrison's research continued, he made another disturbing discovery about the elevator's effects. The device wasn't just accessing past and future versions of people's bodies, it was actually creating what appeared to be alternate timeline versions based on different life paths and choices. Some users reported that their transformed selves had memories and characteristics that didn't match their actual past. A woman who had been transformed to her 20-year-old self remembered attending a different college and pursuing a different career than she had actually chosen. A man who experienced his 60-year-old self gained memories of children he had never had and a marriage that had never occurred. This discovery suggested that the elevator was accessing not just biological age states but parallel versions of people's lives from alternate timelines where they had made different choices or experienced different circumstances. The implications were staggering. The device might be allowing people to experience not just different ages but entirely different versions of their lives. Dr. Harrison's team brought in quantum physicists and consciousness researchers to study this phenomenon. Dr. Maria Santos, a specialist in many worlds theory, proposed that the elevator might be accessing parallel versions of individuals from alternate quantum realities where they had developed differently. What we might be seeing, Dr. Santos explained, isn't just age manipulation but actual access to parallel versions of the same person from different quantum timelines. Each choice we make creates alternate realities where different decisions led to different outcomes. The elevator could be tapping into these parallel selves and temporarily merging their consciousness with our current reality. This theory explained why some transformed individuals had memories and characteristics that didn't match their actual history. They weren't just experiencing their younger or older selves, they were experiencing alternate versions of themselves from parallel realities, where different life events had shaped their development. The quantum consciousness hypothesis made the elevator's effects even more disturbing. If people were actually experiencing alternate versions of themselves from different realities, the psychological impact could be far more severe than previously understood. They weren't just dealing with different ages, they were confronting entirely different lives and identities that might be equally real but incompatible with their current existence. Dr. Harrison's research expanded to include individuals who had experienced these alternate timeline effects. Their psychological profiles showed even more severe identity fragmentation than those who had simply experienced different ages of their current life path. They struggled with questions about which version of their life was real, and whether their current choices and relationships were authentic or simply one possibility among infinite alternatives. The elevator had become more than just a device for age manipulation. It had become a window into the infinite possibilities of human existence, revealing all the lives that people might have lived if they had made different choices. But rather than being liberating, this knowledge proved psychologically devastating for many users. Sarah Williams, a 35-year-old teacher who had used the elevator to experience her 50-year-old self, discovered that in alternate timelines, she had become a successful novelist, a mother of 3, and a world traveler. These alternate lives felt as real and valid as her current existence, leaving her profoundly dissatisfied with her actual life choices. How do I accept my real life when I know there are versions of me living better, more fulfilling lives? Sarah asked Dr. Harrison. I've felt what it would be like to be successful, to have children, to see the world. Those experiences feel as real as anything in my actual life. Why should I be content with this reality when I know better ones exist? This existential crisis became common among elevator users who had experienced alternate timeline versions of themselves. They struggled with what philosophers called the paradox of infinite possibilities, the difficulty of finding meaning and satisfaction in one life when aware of countless other potential lives that might be more fulfilling. Dr. Harrison realized that the elevator represented not just a technological breakthrough, but a fundamental challenge to human psychology and the meaning-making processes that allowed people to find satisfaction in their lives. By revealing the infinite possibilities of existence, the device had stripped away the psychological barriers that normally allowed people to accept their circumstances and find contentment within limitations. The research team began studying the philosophical and spiritual implications of the elevator's revelations about human existence. Religious leaders grappled with questions about the soul's relationship to multiple timeline versions of the same person. Philosophers debated whether knowledge of alternate selves enhanced or diminished human free will and moral responsibility. Dr. Harrison's final phase of research focused on developing interventions to help elevator users cope with the knowledge of their alternate selves and integrate their experiences into a coherent sense of identity. The process required helping people understand that while infinite possibilities might exist, meaning came not from experiencing all possibilities, but from fully committing to and developing within the life they had actually chosen. The therapeutic approach, called reality commitment therapy, helped patients understand that their current life wasn't inferior to alternate versions but was simply one authentic expression of their potential. The goal wasn't to forget or dismiss their experiences of alternate selves, but to use that knowledge to more fully appreciate and develop their actual life circumstances. Margaret Chen became one of the success stories of reality commitment therapy. She learned to integrate her experience as both her 8-year-old self and alternate timeline versions who had made different career choices, using the knowledge to make her current life more fulfilling while accepting its fundamental reality. I learned that there isn't a better version of my life somewhere else. Margaret reflected during her final therapy session. There are different versions, but each one has its own challenges and limitations. My job isn't to live all possible lives, but to live this life as fully and authentically as possible. The elevator showed me what else I might have been, but it also showed me how to appreciate who I actually am. The elevator facility was eventually decommissioned and sealed after Dr. Harrison's research conclusively demonstrated that the psychological risks of temporal manipulation outweighed any potential benefits. The device had revealed profound truths about human development, identity, and the nature of existence, but it had also shown that some knowledge was too dangerous for regular human use. The research data became the foundation for new understanding of age-related psychology and identity development. Dr. Harrison's work influenced therapy approaches for people struggling with aging, life transitions, and existential questions about the paths not taken in life. The elevator's legacy lived on in the enhanced appreciation for natural aging that many of the research participants developed. Having experienced the confusion and identity fragmentation that came with artificial age manipulation, they gained deeper respect for the gradual, organic process of growing older within a single coherent life narrative. Dr. Harrison's final report concluded that while the elevator had demonstrated the technological possibility of age manipulation, it had also revealed why such manipulation was psychologically and socially inadvisable. The natural progression through life stages provided essential continuity and meaning that couldn't be replicated through artificial means. The elevator that could take you to different ages taught us that age isn't just about biology, it's about identity, relationship, and meaning, Dr. Harrison wrote. Each stage of life provides unique perspectives and experiences that contribute to the complete human story. Trying to skip stages or repeat them artificially disrupts the narrative coherence that gives life meaning and human development its purpose. The facility was eventually converted into a research center for studying natural aging and life stage transitions, focusing on helping people navigate the challenges and opportunities of each age without trying to escape or manipulate the natural process. The elevator remained sealed as a reminder that some human limitations existed not as obstacles to overcome but as essential features of what made life meaningful and human experience coherent. In the end, the elevator that could transport people to different ages had taught humanity the most important lesson about time, that its passage wasn't a problem to be solved, but the very foundation of human meaning, growth, and connection. The natural rhythm of aging, with all its challenges and limitations, was revealed to be not humanity's burden, but its greatest gift, the framework within which love, wisdom, and purpose could develop and flourish across the complete span of a human life. The temporal technology that had promised to free people from the constraints of age had ultimately shown them the beauty of accepting those constraints, finding in the natural progression of life stages, not limitations to escape, but opportunities to develop the full richness of human experience within the precious boundaries of a single coherent and meaningful existence.